Welcome to EliNyamal Talkshow, where we report to you on what is going on weekly in Africa and here in the diaspora as well. And some of the topic we're going to touch base on is what's happening in South Africa with former President Jacob Zuma, who is currently in prison. And also leading on to some of the protests that are taking on in Johannesburg as well. And the next topic will be about the meeting with Turkish by the Ethiopian Prime Minister on the conflict and how far it has went. And lastly but not least on the two is the explosion that took off at Kabul airport in Afghanistan. And also I'm going to report on someone very interesting that is taking off the media at this point. So as you guys probably heard report in our last couple of weeks, we've been covering about what's going on in South Africa, starting from the looting, the chaos that broke out, and the former president being arrested, turning himself in as he was circled by the soldiers and taken to jail. He is currently in trial right now and is going through some legal cases as well. Now, Zuma, who is currently in prison for 15 years, went from having over $20 million to pleading for donations to cover his legal fees. To go more into details, after years of allegation, Jacob Zuma Foundation has sent out a plea on his official Twitter page to ask people to open up their wallets and donate towards the president's mounting legal fees. How much that legal fees is, we don't know, and this is a request that is going on to all people in South Africa and those that are supporters of Jacob Zuma. He also noted on the tweet that, "Dear people of South Africa and the world, please lend a helping hand," as I report to you some of the wording that were written on there. This was tweeted on Tuesday morning. A humble call for the legal fees supporting for former President Jacob Zuma. We humbly request for donations support to help cover the legal fees of our Patreon. This is also how you know when leaders have fell into a much deeper hole, could lose everything, and now it is at that point where he is looking for ways to cover his cases in court as well. Now, moving on to a protest that is erupted in Johannesburg currently in South Africa, as the highlight turned out saying, "We are not guinea pigs," said South African anti-vaccine protesters. Now, these people believe that the vaccine protest that they took out to the street on Johannesburg on Wednesday is to voice their concern over Africa's first human trial for potential coronavirus vaccine. And these trials are starting to take on. They are looking for about 2,000 people, volunteers, that would undertake the trial as well. On that same Wednesday, the University of Witwatersrand, in partnership with Oxford University, rolled out South Africa's first clinical trial, which will consist of 2,000 volunteers. The involvement of the South African vaccine trial is intended to expand throughout the continent to help the rest of the countries in Africa. But people did not consider it very likely. And with this trial that is taken on in South Africa, people did not agree with it, and many are rounding up in the streets to protest against this vaccine, those who do not support it. Now, going on to what is going on in Ethiopia, in the last couple of months, there has been a lot of horrific stories and many tragedies that are continuing to go on. And in last week, we reported on Ethiopia going on a full-blown civil war with Tigray alongside with their allies. The Turkish president recapped Erdogan on Wednesday to back the peaceful resolution to help the Ethiopian prime minister. Abiy Ahmed, who took the trip over there, asking the president to step in and to be a mediator to help with the conflict that is taking on in the country. It has escalated to a very large number of cases that are going on, including the allegations with the gang rapes and the women that are suffering in Tigray with by their countrymen who are constantly making their life even more difficult. Now, as this meeting went on, the Turkish government decided to step in to help Ethiopia to be a mediator between them and Tigray, and also Sudan as well, as this might have involved Sudan with all the refugees that have traveled there. And this is to resolve a separate border dispute as well. As you guys know, that Tigray is a landlocked into Ethiopia, humanitarian crisis, cannot get in to help the people there as they are suffering with famine as well and hunger. And also with some of the aids to be delivered to them to help some of the victims as well. Now, in the past 9 months, thousands of people have been killed with the war in Tigray, and this has marked widespread allegations by ethnic Tigrayans of all the gang rapes and the things that the women are facing there. They have women over there who are facing a lot of gang rape and a lot of, crazy horrors in their region are now put in a place where all the victims are located there, and to get consolation and service as well as they try in some way to recover from all of these horrific that are taking place. There are more tragedies and stories and testimonies that are out there on YouTube as well, where you can look up some of their stories, and they're very sad to hear with something that is going on within the country among its own people. Now, with the Afghanistan Taliban takeover, things have gone pretty messy in the last few days alone, and that's how fast the things are growing right now in Afghanistan and how chaotic things are getting. There was an explosion outside of Kabul airport, which announced 13 American soldiers dead in the explosion, and 15 were wounded. About 60 people were announced dead as well, among other Afghanistan, which yesterday or recently it had mounted up to about 100 people. Now, more than 100 people were killed, including the 13 U.S. military service and 90 Afghanistan at the Kabul airport Thursday, with two blasts wrapped through the crowds trying to enter the American control facility, disrupting the push for the evacuation. The suicide bomber, which are found to be the one throwing these attacks at the airport, also followed another bombing by the airport in Abaigate with some of the gunmen that were also found as well. And these were the two bombs that recently took place, taking a lot of lives, and this has been the most deadliest by far since 2011, ever hearing of an American serviceman or military to be killed in Afghanistan. The attack, which is marked the deadliest, the administration deadline is to complete the evacuation by Tuesday, the 31st of this month in August. Now, with Joe Biden with being pressured to extend the evacuation, because it cannot be done in such short time, the evacuation was refused. The extension of the evacuation was refused by the Taliban as well. They demand their ground that it will not be pushed backward. And with the Pentagon stepping in to take charge and control, this could potentially need more military to be drawn into the country in order to evacuate all of the people out of the country if possible, or it would lead to a deadly episode afterwards. Now, what is to come after the 31st, we don't know, but it's definitely ringing a lot of alerts and concern to a lot of the Americans and people around the world on what is to happen. Because the people there knows very well that the Taliban are capable of the most horrific things that they could do in the country. The Taliban are a sworn army of Islamic State and shot dead one of the group top leaders in Afghanistan hours after taking over Kabul. These were where some of the prosecutions started taking place and were held. The two Islamic groups had fought each other in Afghanistan since 2015, particularly in the eastern part of the country as recently on Tuesday. They are rapidly growing and expanding throughout Afghanistan, taking more control. The Islamic State no longer exists in Afghanistan. It is now under the Taliban rule. Now, President Joe Biden spoke out on the attack that took place and sent out a very, very verbal warning to the attackers. He warned those that are behind the deadly terrorist attack that killed and wounded the American service members and the Afghanistan civilians in Kabul on Tuesday that we will hunt you down and make you pay. Now, immediately followed by that, a day later, he followed through with the threat and decided to do a drone strike on Friday, killing two high-profile members of ISIS-K. Now, to know who ISIS-K is like another name for the same terrorist group that are currently in charge. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they all work in the same like mind within the country, taking controls. The first American attack on the terrorist group following a bomb attack on Hamid Karzai International Airport, said the Pentagon on Saturday. With Pentagon taking in control to fight back against what took place in the last few days is now becoming more brutal. The Pentagon's initiated announcement of the strike said one ISIS-K member had been killed. Military officials updated the death toll on Saturday. Those killed were ISIS-K planners and facilitators as well, said the Army General William Hank, who spoke out on that. Now, as this continued to grow, it definitely leaves a lot of question in how big this is going to get and how bad it is going to get. Is it possible that all the American citizens and the Afghanistan civilians that allies with the Americans or the Western will be evacuated by the 31st, or what happens next if they don't get all evacuated? And there's still a lot of debate going on between the White House and the Pentagon on how the plan will go and in what way could they do it without creating any more mistakes or chaos. Now, a terrorist group is a terrorist group and cannot be negotiated in any cause. They are they are there to do what they are supposed to do, and not much anyone can do about it. So may all our hearts continue to go out for the innocent civilians there in Afghanistan who may be suffering prosecution and also going through this such horrific time in the 21st century. Now, I want to mention who is Tom MacDonald. Tom MacDonald is one of the rising stars who is taking up billboards after billboards after billboards. And the reason why I wanted to mention about this man, he is a rapper, a musician who is doing more than just music in the industry. He's not just only singing or giving out tunes or entertainment of any kind, but he is also giving words and knowledge and truth of what is going on in our society. It's like having someone who can read your mind and him becoming the voice of what we think and what we worry about in our daily life. According to who he is, he was a Canadian. He's a Canadian rapper, was born in Canada, in Vancouver, and he was one of the artists who rise up after connecting to Eminem with one of the songs that took off starting in February 2018. As he continued his journey in the last few months in 2021, on January, he released a single hit called Fake Woke. And from there, he continued to to dispute many of his songs on the Billboard, hitting top 100, coming at about 72, around there. He is an instrumental vocal who is very strong on his words, and he released his album or his single song that took off on June 21st called Snowflakes. If you guys haven't heard of the song Snowflakes, that was the song that hit over 1 million views within matters of hours. Every lyrics in that song and line to line is basically talking about what is going on in our American society and the battle that we have going on against our psychological warfare, and how divided we are into left or right, conservative or liberals, and everything just becoming a political correctness, political view. And so that tells you America is no longer united as it used to, or if it ever was, but now it is more divided than ever based on politics. And Tom MacDonald is definitely one of the brave artists who is speaking a lot of these things that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to mention, including his newest release that just came out, Brainwashed and Dummies. If you guys ever see mannequins at the store, lines of mannequins, you know, you'll see a lot of that in the video. So Dummies is kind of representing the term for how we no longer think for humanity, or in some sort of way in that case. But I bring him up, so I said check him out, Tom MacDonald. His lyrics are very, very alarming. They're very, it could really teach you a lot. You could really grasp a lot from it and think of what is going on in our society, especially if you are in the woke level. It's time to wake up. Thank you and have a wonderful night.
Hot mix mixing.
Du nouveau à Minneapolis, Tempo Afrique Travel. Vous voulez voyager? Achetez vos billets d'avion à l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, pas de problème de connexion, pas de problème de transfert de vol. Avec l'agence de voyage Tempo Afrique Travel, c'est le voyage en toute tranquillité, en toute beauté, de votre maison jusqu'à votre destination. Votre satisfaction est notre plaisir.